Hello, I am Tina, Tank's full-time voiceover artist. In this episode of the Tank Magazine podcast, I will be reading from Lamorna Ash's piece Something More Than Superficial Perfection, taken from Tank's latest winter travel issue. In the piece, Ash describes her visit to the SHA Wellness Clinic in Spain's Sierra Helada mountains, recounting her immersion in the clinic's rituals of self-transformation and the dilated experience of time they seem to induce. "Step into my office," he says. Behind one of the many unmarked doors off the bright white waiting rooms of the SHA Wellness Clinic, near Alicante, is a darkened interior. Its ceiling is punctuated by hundreds of blinking lights in imitation of the night sky, but this is the least surprising thing about the SHA practitioner's office. The entire floor space is taken up by a velvet black plunge pool. I step through the door and descend into the pool. He tells me to close my eyes and to trust him, before gently guiding my head back until I am floating in the warm water. This is Watsu, a water-based therapy first dreamed up at Harbin Hot Springs, California, in the 1980s by a man named Harold Dahl. The technique involves the practitioner synchronizing the receiver's breathing with their motion through the water, the resulting rhythmic dance of the partially immersed body designed to provoke powerful emotional and physical responses. The world slows as the Brian Eno-esque ambient music is transformed by its contact with the water, the notes elongated, made strange. My body is supported, protected, cradled by this person I have only just met. I become weightless. The likelihood of my allowing an absolute stranger to touch me, let alone draw me around a swimming pool for an hour, would have been slim to none before I entered SHA Wellness Clinic. I am resistant to most kinds of self-care treatments, squirming at the idea of massages and doubtful as to the validity of the proliferation of healing therapies that have cropped up in the last few decades. And yet, after 3 days of being alternatively pampered and prodded by SHA's impressive range of clinicians and practitioners, here I was, willingly and wholly submitting myself to the Watsu practitioner. It is the exceptional level of care and compassion with which the SHA consultants, carefully selected by SHA's president and founder, Alfredo Bottolier, treat each visitor to the clinic that makes it such an extraordinarily successful enterprise, so unlike anything else of its kind. I arrive at SHA in the midst of a thunderstorm, thick, dirty yellow clouds obscuring the mountains that make up the landscape of the Sierra Helada Natural Park, where the clinic is located, on a site that was once Botolier's own holiday home. Forked lightning illuminates the surfeit of dark tower blocks in the neighboring tourist city of Benidorm, as much the antithesis of SHA as any experience could be, and in my mind's eye the thunderstruck package holiday destination is refigured into a comic book metropolis of superheroes and villains. As I approach the clinic's drive, the white tiers of the ultramodern wellness clinic rise up like a structure somewhere between a cruise ship and a Californian beach house. Inside, almost every surface is a gleaming white marble, while those that are not are instead reflective, casting different versions of my figure from every angle across the lobby, so that all the flaws SHA might correct for me in the coming days may be seen at once. This year is SHA's 10-year anniversary. Throughout that period, the clinic has remained at the forefront of wellness travel, ushering over 50,000 guests through its glass doors to experience cutting-edge treatments and the specially curated SHA diet served in the rooftop restaurant with its views over the sun-scorched mountains and the Mediterranean Sea. Bottolier established the spa after a radical change to his own diet cured him of a worrying diagnosis. It is an origin story peddled repeatedly by pioneers and entrepreneurs of the wellness industry, having recovered from an illness, often dietary-related. Through a mixture of experimentation with wellness cures and diets, they then set up a business lifestyle brand food range in order to share their life-saving treatments with the world, at least those willing to pay for it, that is. The word wellness was first coined in the 17th century simply as an antonym to illness, but it has since evolved to embody a positive quality in its own right. The term has become proactive, an ideal that requires greater and greater quantities of time and money spent in its pursuit. The 4-day discovery program at SHA, which I was on, begins at €2,490, but can cost as much as €19,250 if you stay in a penthouse residence. Nevertheless, for such pecuniary sacrifice, one does receive a tremendous amount. SHA's particular model of wellness, combining both Eastern and Western therapies, as well as scientific innovation and traditional medicine, is encompassed by what they call the 360 degrees method: healthy nutrition, natural therapies, inner balance, preventative anti-aging and regenerative medicine, non-invasive aesthetic medicine, fitness discipline, healthy living academy and cognitive stimulation. In practice, this means a rigorous schedule of appointments that will see you seamlessly handed from one specialist to the next during your stay like a relay baton, without time to truly acknowledge the difference each individual treatment might be making to your life until you are on the plane back home. For a principal doctrine of SHA is that the clinic ought not to offer a quick, temporary fix to its clients' unhealthy lifestyles and habits, but rather instill in them a comprehensive ideology of wellness that they might continue to follow long after they have returned to their daily lives. In the editor's note to the first edition of SHA magazine, brought out to celebrate the 10th anniversary, Bottelier describes his wellness clinic as a utopia, and, certainly, there is something illusory, almost fantastical about the experience of staying there. As I gaze out at Benidorm from the balcony of my sparsely furnished suite after my first night of uninterrupted sleep in a long time, it is as if a glassy membrane has appeared, separating me from the outside world. Spas tend to occupy these dreamlike, untethered, almost cultural realms, swaddled in white dressing gowns. Their guests are insulated from reality for as long as they remain within their confines. This experience of withdrawal from the ordinary passage of time that occurs in spas and their ilk is best described in The Magic Mountain, Thomas Mann's 1924 magnum opus, the action or, more aptly, inaction of which takes place at the Berghof Sanatorium in the Swiss Alps. Mann meditates much on the way that time is manipulated and reconstituted as a result of the repetitious, monotonous nature of life at the sanatorium, where patients eagerly count the 7 minutes taken to measure their temperatures, so as to attain some concrete hold on the duration of their stay at the sanatorium. What then is the cause of this relaxation, his narrator asks, this slowing down that takes place when one does the same thing for too long a time? He decides it is something psychical. The perception of time tends, through periods of unbroken uniformity, to fall away. The longer Hans Karstorp, Mann's protagonist, spends at Berghof, the more disconnected he feels from the world outside, which the patients take to calling the flatland. My own flatland quickly retreats from my mind after a single day at SHA, my phone left unanswered as I give myself up to the rhythms of life at the clinic. There are other similarities between SHA and Berghof, like the ominous towers of Benidorm that encroach further and further along the Spanish coastline each holiday season. The resort below the sanatorium has over the years begun swallowing up the original village, extending further and further towards the entrance of the valley. From their lofty, exclusive residency at Berghof, the patients look down fearfully at the teeming lives continuing as normal below them. Mann's description of the interior of the sanatorium is also a dead ringer for SHA's waiting rooms, corridors lighted by electric lights and white glass shades set in the ceiling. The walls gleamed with hard white enamel paint. They had a glimpse of a nursing sister in a white cap. At SHA, one sits, robed, in one of the colorless, hushed waiting rooms, appropriately named Harmony, Orient, Occident, and Balance, and watches how, punctually at every hour, on the hour, the room flushes out of people as each client is led away into unseen, private rooms by beaming, immaculately dressed consultants. The clack of flip-flops echoes down the corridors and mixes with the sound of tinkling, running water, a recurrent design motif that adds to the pervading feeling of being cleansed just by being present in the space of the clinic. Guided by my consultant, I pass perfect green squares of astroturf and white sculptures displaying taut, toned bodies, suggestive of what dedication to the SHA method could endow me with. But, as I learn after my first few appointments, SHA strives for something more than just superficial perfection. And here lies the most significant aspect of the clinic's work, to change one's life from within, as well as without, by helping its visitors to establish particular tools and mechanisms that will allow them to decrease their stress levels and cope with latent emotional difficulties, like mindfulness and yoga. Indeed, since SHA was first established, the Wellness Unit has been expanded and a truly brilliant anti-stress director appointed to further their work in this area, which includes medical consultations, psychotherapy coaching sessions, therapeutic treatments like the deep tissue massage, acupuncture and the drawing up of a full health plan with the anti-stress therapist at the end of your stay. Behind each door of the clinic is another Willy Wonka's chocolate factory style, state-of-the-art machine or technique promising to dazzle you with its salubrious possibilities. I have acupuncture for the first time, and am taken through it by an immensely sympathetic consultant who thanks me for trusting her and explains to me how acupuncture was once thought of as a purely alternative form of medicine, but scientific explanations behind its benefits have now aligned themselves with ancient Chinese medicine. That tradition believes that the thin needles inserted at one of the 400 acupuncture points along the body's meridians, the channels through which the fundamental life force qi flows through the body, may release the qi where it has become disrupted or blocked. In Western medical acupuncture, the needles are thought to stimulate sensory nerves under the skin to relieve pain. As with acupuncture, the treatments at SHA meet at the intersection of alternative, more mystical therapies and those founded in rigorous science. There is a memorable scene in the Magic Mountain in which the patients meet covertly in a patient's private quarters for a spiritualist encounter requiring them to sit at a round table transformed into a Ouija board, a glass ready to move around the table and spell out words. In this place of medical healing, suddenly there enters the realm of spirits, a confluence of science and magic. After the encounter, Carstorp imagines that the delusions of the glass were a mixture of actuality and dream, perhaps less strange in nature than to our crude, everyday processes of thought. At SHA, too, there is a kind of magic to each treatment that seems always to be just beyond the reaches of my everyday comprehension. After the acupuncture needles are removed, I feel a great welling up of emotion that seems not to come from a single source, but rather emanates out from my whole body. Later, an energy health consultation analyzes my energy fields by measuring my skin's electrical resistance at certain points in my body. The consultant informs me that I have one of the highest, most worrying results for nervous system energy she has ever seen and writes in capitals under my graph, "To alert. Warning, sleep." This does not immediately allay my apparently volcanic anxiety levels. In fact, it is somewhat alarming to see myself rendered graphically in this way, both recognizing what I am being told about my inner workings and at the same time experiencing this odd representation of the self as alien, much like how I can recognize the outlines of my body in an X-ray, even if there is something deeply foreign about the bright white lines of the bones hidden beneath my skin. In my Indiba treatment, a radiofrequency machine runs up and down my body to sculpt and tighten my skin, rubbing away each raised bump of cellulite and contour line of stretch mark, the ordnance survey map of my body's past geography. Afterwards, as I leave the room, my Mexican clinician, Salome, who shares her name with the Judean princess who performed the dance of the seven veils before Herod II and became a Christian symbol of female seduction, calls back to me enthusiastically, "Enjoy your new bottom." The most surreal, space-age treatment I receive on the Discovery program is without doubt the hydroenergetic detox cure. My consultant leads me first to a small, dim room at the center of which stands a superior-looking bathtub, radiating purple light. She leaves the room, instructing me to enter the bath and promising to return later to take me on to the next phase of the treatment. Once settled in the bath, the water starts to swirl and bubble, caressing my body, while the underwater lights pulse from one color to the next in time with the vigorous motion of the water. All too soon the hydrotherapy bathing element of the procedure comes to an end and my consultant is back, wrapping me up in a towel and directing me to another room. Towel stripped off, she paints my body with a hot, creamy substance made of seaweed and, once lying down, wraps me up in cling film, so that I closely resemble a piece of hand-rolled sushi. Then, she proceeds to cover me in a thick blue plastic cover and, noticing the bemused look on my face, says mysteriously, "Oh, it's not over yet." She presses a button and once more I am left alone, lying in an anonymous dark room. The patients at Berghof sarcastically refer to themselves as horizontalers and, lying in this strange, prostrate state, I muse that I too have probably spent more of my time at SHA lying than standing. I hear a rumbling sound and the blue plastic sheet starts to inflate, filling with hot, bubbling water, so that I am slowly lifted up from the table, cocooned in my layers of seaweed, cling film and now a channel of hot water. Barely accustomed to my new circumstances, I am deflated, unwrapped from my layers and shepherded into one last room, where I am asked to stand at the far end beside a handy metal rail. I turn back to my consultant, who is now holding a fireman's hose and looking at me apologetically. "Turn around," she says, and my back is attacked by a ferocious jet of water, which feels like 1,000 needles being drilled into my spine. A few moments later, she turns the jet off. Done. The treatment is over. I am rushed back into my robe and dropped off at the Harmony Room to await my next appointment. I touch my arms. My skin feels deliciously smooth, and despite the unnerving nature of the treatment, I am surprised to find I am deeply calm. Though the nutritional rules at SHA, no drinking, no caffeine, no refined sugar, no meat or dairy products, are inflexible, the meals themselves are highly inventive and imaginative, as well as strikingly attractive in their presentation. One can choose from 3 menus, provided the doctor agrees after your medical examination: the SHA menu, a gastronomic 3-course meal; the BioLite menu, a slightly more restrictive diet that still nonetheless includes delicious fresh fish several times a week and 3 courses at lunchtime; and the Cushy menu, a much stricter diet for those wishing to lose weight or detox their body, which I happily avoid throughout. SHA also has its own on-site cooking academy, where you can learn to create your own SHA-inspired healthy recipes that follow the same principles as the clinic's restaurant: the balancing of food's yin and yang energies, which roughly collates to their pH levels, so alcohol and caffeine are deemed especially yin and related to expansion, while salt, eggs and red meat are yang foods related to contraction; the use of seasonal vegetables and fish, and the inclusion of Asian ingredients like kombu, an edible kelp, and tamari, a gluten-free alternative to soy sauce. One morning before a standard SHA breakfast of miso soup, for digestion, a baked apple smoothie, a miniature raspberry pancake and avocado on pumpkin seed toast, I joined the optional morning walk advertised on the weekly timetable and am shuttled down into Altea on a private bus for a brisk march along the boardwalk, the Costa Blanca's answer to Venice Beach. As the newly risen sun's light rushes across the water to meet us in Altea, from the Moorish al-Fire meaning health to all, it illuminates the throngs of bars and restaurants boasting greasy cuisines from across the world that litter the shorefront. It is disorientating to find myself beyond the sanitized walls of the clinic. I watch as workers sweep bottle cap-covered floors and rub away the sticky cocktail stains spilled on tables the previous night, and feel, like Karstorp and the other patients at Berghof, overwhelmed by the flatland, relieved to have some respite from its excesses for a short while. On the bus back up to our sanctuary, I overhear a SHA veteran speaking with a new arrival at the clinic. After listening to the second woman breathlessly admit that the myriad treatments and consultations were all happening so fast that she couldn't tell if any of it was making a difference to her well-being, the first woman firmly reassures her, "Trust the system. These guys know what they're doing." It is only once back in London, faced with my old habits, that I start to recognize quite how well executed and efficacious the system at SHA really is. Each consultation and treatment complements and strengthens the overall impact of the clinic on one's well-being, setting its clients off on a road towards taking better care of their minds and bodies. In this way, SHA is expanding the definition of wellness beyond its consumerist occupations and eliciting genuine change in people's lives. A week later, my body feels strengthened, my mind calmer, more permeable to new ideas and, though back in the flatland, a part of me remains submerged somewhere in the other world of SHA. I have been Tina, Tank's full-time voiceover artist. To hear more podcasts from Tank Magazine, subscribe on iTunes and follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is taken from Waiting Games by Kate Simcoe and the London Electronic Orchestra.